Welcome back. In today's video, we will be looking at the recursive lambda function in Microsoft Excel. We will use the recursive lambda function to solve a common problem which most Excel users face. We will be removing unwanted characters from a text string. Many times when we import data from external sources or the web, we notice that there are some unwanted characters like a percentage sign, a hash sign, and these unwanted characters are scattered all across your text string. And you simply want to find out a way to remove all of these unwanted characters with just a single function, and today in this video we will be developing that function. But before going any further, there is a caveat here. This video is an advanced Excel video. I assume that you have a basic understanding of the lambda function in Microsoft Excel. If you don't know what the lambda function is and how do we use it, I suggest to you to go through the lambda function video that is already available on this channel, and the link for that video is in the description. So at the outset of this video, we need to understand what recursion is. Recursion basically is a method of solving a problem in which we divide a big problem into smaller steps and solve one step at a time. So in the recursive lambda function, what actually happens is that the lambda function calls itself. We develop a lambda function, and within the lambda function there is this a mechanism where this function calls itself. So it's a way of a function calling itself. Also, you need to understand that whenever you develop a lambda function, a recursive lambda function where the function calls itself, there should be an exit mechanism, because if there isn't any exit mechanism, the function will keep calling itself again and again and again, and this loop will continue forever, and the end result will be the function will not work. So there should be a mechanism for the lambda function to come out of the loop, and this mechanism is usually done with the help of if function. So what we do is that we insert a condition within the lambda function that if a particular condition holds true, in that case we call the lambda function, or if a particular condition evaluates to false, in that case we call the lambda function, and if that condition evaluates to false, in that case we come out of the function. So there should be this mechanism, and this is typically done with the help of if function in the lambda function, recursive lambda function. So now let's come straight to the point. We have some data, source data here, which contains unwanted characters. Like you observe here, there are various characters like this dollar sign here, this and sign, these unwanted characters are here, and you want to remove all of them in just one instance. You can use the find and replace feature of Microsoft Excel, but the problem with find and replace is that you have to use the find and replace feature as many times as there are unwanted characters. For example, you will remove the dollar sign in the first instance, then the ampersand in the second instance, and the percentage sign in the next instance, so on and so forth. But with recursive lambda, you can achieve the result in just one click of a mouse. So I will delete this cleaned data here. I have already created the recursive lambda function in Excel. What I will do here is I will use the remove chars function. It is a recursive lambda function which I have already created and named in the name manager of Microsoft Excel. I have to enter the text range in which I have unwanted characters and the string of unwanted characters. That is it. I will close this remove chars function, hit enter on the keyboard. You will see that all of these unwanted characters have been removed in one instance. Now the question is, how do I create this remove chars function? If you try to use remove chars in Microsoft Excel, you will notice that it won't be there. It is not an inbuilt function in Microsoft Excel. It's a custom built function. I have created it manually. Now I will go to the formulas tab, then go to name manager. You will see there is this remove chars function. For now I will delete this. Here we will create it from scratch. I will delete it here, close the name manager. So to develop a recursive lambda function, we have to identify the key challenges. The first challenge is, how do we remove the unwanted characters? So we have to identify the core function which we'll be using to remove the unwanted characters. Our core function here in this case will be the substitute function. We will be using the substitute function to remove these unwanted characters, one character at a time. Our text will be this text here. All text will be one unwanted character from this text string. The first unwanted character here is an underscore. So this will be our old text hard coded here. We will be replacing it with a blank text string, with an empty text string. Close the parenthesis, hit enter on the keyboard. So in the first iteration, our result will be this text string. In the next iteration, we have to identify the next unwanted character, that is the caret sign here, from this text string. So let's copy this data here, create a new worksheet, paste it here, values only, increase the column width, wrap the text. Now in the second iteration, we will be removing the caret sign from this text string. So again, we'll be using the substitute function. Our text string will be this text string, old text will be the caret sign. We'll be replacing it with a blank text string, close the parenthesis, hit enter. So this will be our resultant text string. Again, wrap it. Again, we will copy it, paste it on a new worksheet. In the next iteration, we'll be removing the forward slash. So we'll go to sheet 2 here. Again, use the substitute function here. Text string will be this text string, old text will be a forward slash. We'll be replacing it with an empty text string, close parenthesis, hit enter. So this will be our resultant text string. So this is how we'll be using the substitute function iteratively to remove unwanted character at a time. Once we have used the substitute function iteratively for each unwanted character, we will be getting a clean text string. So that will be the final result of using the substitute function iteratively. So this is our first key challenge. Now let's delete these worksheets here. Our next challenge is how do we identify which character we have to remove from this unwanted character string. So again, we'll be using another function here, that is the write function. Text will be this unwanted text string. For number of characters, since we are removing one unwanted character at a time, number of characters will be length of this text string minus 1, because we are purging one character at a time from this text string. So that will be the length of cell C2 minus 1. Close the write function, hit enter on the keyboard. Again, let's drag this formula down. You will notice here one character is being purged out of this text string. So now, which character we have to remove? For that, we will be using the left function, left of this text string. Again, let's drag this formula down. So here you will understand the unwanted character which we have to remove in each iteration. In the first iteration, we are removing underscore. In the second iteration, we are removing this caret sign. In the third iteration, we are removing forward slash. In the fourth iteration, we are removing ampersand, so on and so forth. So this is how we will be using the recursive lambda function. All these functions, the substitute function, the left function, the right function, we'll be using all of these functions within our recursive lambda function. One more point to note down here is, instead of hard coding the unwanted characters in the substitute function, we can use the left function within the substitute function to insert these unwanted characters dynamically in the substitute function. So here is how you can do this. You can use the substitute function here as usual. The text is this text here. Old text will be, instead of hard coding the old text here, we can use the left function within the substitute function. Left of this text string, number of characters will be 1. Then the next new text will be as usual blank text string, close the parenthesis, hit enter on the keyboard. So this is how you can use the substitute function to remove unwanted characters. Now after having identified your core functions, it is now time to develop the recursive lambda function. So let us delete this data here. Let us delete these values also. Also, I will go to formulas, name manager, and delete any already existing recursive lambda functions to develop the recursive lambda function from scratch. I will delete these functions here. And now it is time to create a recursive lambda function from scratch. What you simply have to do is you have to use the lambda function, then define the parameters for the lambda function. In this case, we have two parameters. One is the text from which we have to remove the unwanted characters, and next parameter will be the unwanted character string. So the text will be the first parameter. You can name it the way you want it. I will simply name it text to make it simple. Also, I will name another parameter as uchar short for unwanted characters. Now I will use the if function within the lambda function. The if function is used to develop a mechanism with the help of which we can exit out of the recursive iterations. So the logic here is, if uchar means unwanted characters, it is not empty, in that case we will go and use our lambda function. We will name that removechar, and if the value is false, that means if uchar is empty, in that case there is no unwanted character, and we simply want to return the text in its current form. So that is the logic here. Now again, here when we call the removechar function, it is our lambda function, custom lambda function, which we will be developing. When we call it, it again has two parameters. One is the text and another is uchar, that is unwanted characters. Now instead of directly entering this parameter text here, we can use our core function, that is the substitute function, which we have already talked about earlier. We will use that substitute function here. Substitute, our text will be text as usual, old text will be left of uchar, number of characters will be 1, and new text is an empty text string. Here we'll be closing the parenthesis, we'll be closing the substitute function. So this is the first parameter for the lambda function. The next parameter for the lambda function, instead of entering this uchar within this lambda function, we'll be using the write function, because it is the write function which gives us the unwanted characters for each iteration. As we have seen earlier, write function will be used here. Write of text will be uchar, and number of characters will be length of uchar -1. Close the write function. Then we'll be again closing the lambda function here. So this is our custom lambda function, the recursive lambda function. We'll hit enter on the keyboard. Here you will notice that this function returns a calc error because we have not passed any values, passed any arguments to this lambda function. Now let us simply copy this formula here, then press escape on the keyboard, go to formulas, name manager, create a new name. We'll name our custom function as removechar. It should be the same name which we have used within the formula, removechar. Then here refers to, we'll paste our formula here, and also here in the comment section we will name the arguments. Text will be text string from which we have to remove unwanted characters. Uchar is unwanted character string. Click OK here. You can see our custom lambda function has been created and it is named removechar. Also you will notice here, this should be the same name. The name in the name manager should be the same name which we have used here within the lambda function. Only then will our lambda function work. Now let us delete this formula here. Now we can directly use the removechar function. You can see here our removechar displays in the Excel list of functions. We can use it here. It has two arguments. One is the text. Let's enter the text string here, A2 through A6, and another is uchar. Uchar is this unwanted character string, close the parenthesis, hit enter on the keyboard. Now here you have this clean data here. Now if all of this, the development of this recursive lambda function to remove unwanted characters seems complex to you, if you couldn't comprehend what was going at the background, how did this lambda function remove the characters, so if all of this seems complex, let me simplify things for you. We have two core functions here. Let me delete this here. One is the substitute function, our core function. First core function is the substitute function. Text is this range here. Then we have old text. Old text is left of unwanted characters. Number of characters is 1. Then we have to replace these values with an empty string. So this is one of our core functions. The next core function is our write function. The first argument for the write function is text, that is these unwanted characters here. The number of characters is length of this text string minus 1. Close the write function, hit enter on the keyboard. Now you can see that when we drag this formula down, one character at a time is being purged out of this text string. So in the second iteration, this is our text string, and the unwanted character that is being removed from this iteration will be this caret sign. In the third iteration, the unwanted character that will be removed will be this forward slash. In the fourth iteration, the unwanted character that will be removed will be and. Because in the substitute function, we're using the left of C2 here. So in the second iteration, it will be the left of C3, that will be this caret sign here. In the fourth iteration, it will be the left of C4, that will be this forward slash here. In the fifth iteration, it will be the left of C5, and that will be this ampersand here. So this is how things go in the background when we use recursive lambda function here. Now to develop this lambda function from scratch, let's create this lambda function here. This time in this cell, we will use the lambda function. Then we will define two parameters. One will be text. This time we will name it text1, and second parameter will be uchar. We will name it uchar1 this time because we already have created a lambda function to remove unwanted characters. For the calculation part of this lambda function, I will use the if function as usual. If uchar1 is not empty, in that case we will use our remove char1. We will name this lambda function as remove char1. We will call this function. So if uchar1 is not empty, we will call remove char function because there are unwanted characters which have to be removed. Otherwise, if uchar1 is empty, that is this evaluates to false, in that case we will return text1 in its current form. So we will close this if function here, close the lambda function. So this is how we will be developing our lambda function. Now this remove char has two arguments. One is the text and another is uchar. For text, we are using the substitute function to return our text, and for unwanted characters, we are using the write function to return our unwanted characters for each iteration. So let's hit enter this time. You will see that this function returns calc error. Now let us go here. Before this equal sign, we will enter an inverted comma, single comma here. Now let us go and copy our substitute function here. We'll copy it. We'll paste this substitute function here in the remove chars. It will be the first argument, then a comma, hit enter. Then we will go here in this cell and copy this write function here. Then go to our lambda function and paste it as the second argument of remove chars function. We'll paste it here. Now we simply have to do a couple of replacements. This range A2 to A6, it represents text, but in this function, in this lambda function, we have named text as text1. So we will enter text1 here as the name for this range. Then for C2 is the unwanted character. So we will replace this C2 cell reference with the parameter name, that is uchar1. Then again In the right function we also have C2. Here again we will replace it with uchar1. Then in the len function we again have a cell reference C2. We will replace this cell reference also with uchar1. The reason I am doing this, replacing cell references with parameter names, is because the lambda function works with parameter names. Then when we finally use the lambda function, at that stage we have to give it a cell reference. But when we are defining the lambda function, in that case we simply have to insert parameter names within the lambda function. Cell references are only used at the final stage when we have developed this lambda function. Then when we have to actually use it, in that case only we will pass cell references. So here in the calculation we have to enter parameter names only. So that is why I am replacing these cell names with parameter names. Now let me remove this single comma here, hit enter on the keyboard. This function again returns the calc error. Now let us simply copy this function here, press escape on the keyboard, go to formulas, name manager, create a new function here. We will name it removechar1, the same name which I have used in the lambda function. Then here in refers to, I will paste my formula which I have developed. Here in the comment section I can define that text1 refers to the text string from which we have to remove unwanted characters, and uchar1 refers to the unwanted character string. But here I will ignore that. I will simply click on OK. You can see that removechar1 is another function here displaying in the name manager. Now I simply can use this removechar1. Now this is the stage where I have to pass cell references. For text1 I will be passing this cell reference A1 through A6, and for unwanted characters I will be passing this cell reference C2. Close the parenthesis, hit enter. So here you have this clean text string. Let me select all of this data, go to home page, then wrap the text to check if everything is fine. So you can see that there isn't any unwanted character. All of these characters have been removed by the recursive lambda function which we have developed. So this was a brief overview of the recursive lambda function in Microsoft Excel and how we can use it to remove unwanted characters from a text string. Recursive lambda function is a powerful way to solve many of our problems in Microsoft Excel which otherwise seemed impossible. So I hope this video was helpful in your Excel journey. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Keep supporting, subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.